Hare Krishna.
Hare Kṛṣṇa, dear devotees, please join us today in the study of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. You're all welcome. Today we'll be studying Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 12. The topics of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam summarized. Where we'll be sharing some amazing blessings of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Please join us in Jaladhana of praise. Hare Krishna. Krishna, dear devotees, please join us in Mangalacharan prayers together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiriyet Shratam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto Bhadrani Vidunurti Suhasatam Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavate Sevaya Bhagavate Ruttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Neshtiki. Hare Krishna. Please join us in the recitation of the first verse. Welcome to Śrīmad Bhāgavatam class. Today we'll be studying Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 12. The topics of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam summarized. So we covered, in previous so many verses from verse 1 through 12, and these are the last two chapters. So this is the topic of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam summarized, where we learn about the blessings of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, so that we can perfect our life in this very lifetime, right? We can attain perfection. Verse 1. Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Uvacha.
Namo Dharmaya Mahate.
Namo Dharmaya Mahate.
Namah Krishnaya Vedase.
Namah Krishnaya Vedase.
Brahmanebhyo Namaskritya.
Brahmanebhyo Namaskritya.
Dharman Vakshe Sanatanam.
Dharman Vakshe Sanatanan.
Hare Krishna. Sutta Uvacha. Sutta Goswami said, Namaha. Senses. Dharmaya, to the principle of religion. Mahate, greatest. Namaha, obeisances. Krishnaya, to Lord Krishna. Vedase, the creator. Brahmanebhyaha, to the Brahmanas. Namaskritya, offering my obeisances. Dharman, the principles of religion. Vakshaye, I shall speak. Sanatanam, eternal. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sutta Goswami said, offering my obeisances to the supreme religious principle, devotional service, to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Creator, and to all the Brahmanas, I shall now describe the eternal principles of religion. Purport. In this 12th chapter of the 12th canto, Sutta Goswami will summarize all the topics of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam beginning from the first canto. Hare Krishna. Please join us in Guru Pranati. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshitarine Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripa Tadaham Vande Shri Gurum Deenataranam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So you can already imagine that in this chapter, since it's a summary of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, and every chapter had blessings with it, right? So there are so many chapters. Can you imagine? Then there are so many blessings. So while the chapters are getting summarized, the blessings are also getting summarized in this chapter. Yes. So today we are studying Canto 12, Chapter 12. The topics of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam summarized. And where we are learning and beginning with the blessings. So Sutta Goswami in the previous chapter provided this solution as how one can remembering the 12 groups of 7 personalities, who are associates of the sun god, and there are different personalities who act as sun god for each month of the year. So this is the lunar months we are talking about, or the Vedic months, that we normally refer to. And here the first blessing starts from 59. Yet at the same time, the attitude has been identified. When Sutta Goswami is glorifying the attitude of the listeners, the hearers, he is glorifying that attitude. He is calling such personalities great. And the interesting thing is, this attitude of the listener, of the hearer, who is listening to Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, is also glorified, and it was also earlier glorified by him when he started the narration of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam in the first canto. So quickly I will cover that and then we'll come to this topic. Tadvad visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishokam apadhavatyapi namanyanantasya yasho ankitaniyaha yat shravanti gayanti grahanti sadhvaha. Now, in this particular shloka, he replaced Viplav with Samplavo. Both have the same meaning, revolution. So on the other hand, so there are various kind of literatures we find in this material world. But the literature that discusses about the name, fame, glories and pastimes of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, the transcendental glories of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, it's a different kind of creation. It is full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution. Right? Viplavo or Samplavo. So that revolution is going to bring a revolution. Now the interesting thing is, it is not going to create a revolt. So this is, when I read this verse, it actually reminded me of the French Revolution. When Louis XVI, the King Louis, the revolt happened, there were 2 messengers. They rushed to inform him. One messenger was carrying the message that there is a revolt, against his kingdom. Another one was carrying the message that there is a revolution, so the revolt has been successfully carried out. So the person who was the messenger who was carrying the message that there is a revolution appeared before than the messenger who was bringing the message that there is a revolt. So it is already successful, he came to know. And sometimes this also happens in our life, right? Sometimes we send an email to the person that we will be coming, and then when we reach the destination, then they say, no, I have not received the email. And they're checking the mail and poof, appears the email. They say, oh, yes, I see it now. So here in this verse, Sutta Goswami is again glorifying that it will bring a revolution in the life of those people, right? Which in this impious lives of the world's misdirected civilization. So this is people who are lost in the darkness of this Kali age, in the mode of ignorance. They would get transcendental light. And even though every shloka, even though every verse could be imperfectly composed, well, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said this is Amal Puran, faultless, context-wise, right? So we should understand from that perspective. So honest men, they hear, they sing, and they accept every verse as transcendental words of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa and his devotees. So with that attitude, we should be reading this. That's why the scripture is said to be meant for Paramhamsas, because they rejoice when reading Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And if we are not Paramhamsas, of course we are not at this moment, but in the association of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, which is non-different from Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So Lord Kṛṣṇa appears in 3 forms in this Kali age. First is in the form of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, I already told you. What's the second form? Please write. Second is, commented, if you know it. In the DT form, Archa Vigraha form. And what's the third form? In his name form, holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And there's a beautiful verse that appears in the scriptures. Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasya Vigraha Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto Abhinnatvam Nama Namino. Nama Chintamani Krishnas. Lord Krishna's name is like the touchstone, like Chintamani, right? It can fulfill all our desires. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, and it is endued with all kind of transcendental mallows. All his potencies are, in his name, so it's non-different. And Purna Shuddho, completely purifies us, Nitya Mukta, and eternally liberates us from the three modes of material nature and fearfulness. So we become fearless and we come to the transcendental platform and we become happy, transcendentally blissful. Abhinnatvam Nama Namino. So the name and the person who is named are non-different. So Lord Krishna's name and the person Lord Kṛṣṇa, they are non-different. So that's why we also refer to Lord's name as Nama Guru, Prabhu. We refer to him because he is appearing in this Kali age to create this revolution. So even though we may say the verses imperfectly, but the Lord's mercy is there that by remembering him and glorifying him and sharing this transcendental knowledge with others, we will become perfect and others who hear will become perfect. So you are on your way to perfection. So that's right there is a blessing. You're already on your way to perfection when this verse is being recited. Now other verses appeared. Now with respect to this, I was looking and a beautiful picture is given in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam of Lord Shri Krishna, where he is enchanting with his flute all of us. He's calling all of us that please come, I'm waiting for you to engage in this loving relationship. He is more desirous than we are. So we should understand. Yesterday we covered, yes, it's a loving invitation for all of us, for all of you, that we should go and join him. Yesterday we talked about that, in the description of Mahapurusha, that the earth is his feet, right? And so when we fall at his feet. So if we are all residing at his feet, we have a choice to make. Do we want to be thorns or do we want to be flowers? That is our choice. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya vajanam. So accepting everything that's favorable to devotional service and rejecting everything that is unfavorable to devotional service. This should be the attitude, right? And all other rules and regulations and prohibitions and so many other aspects are just subservient to these two principles. So understanding this is very important as we go ahead. And now I just want to cover the blessings before we go over the summary, which will remind you of all the wonderful pastimes of Lord Kṛṣṇa and his devotees that we have covered in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam until this chapter. So here, next blessing that Lord Kṛṣṇa, Sutta Goswami is revealing is that one who hears Śrīmad Bhāgavatam on Ekadashi or Dwadashi. So this is not chanting but even hearing. Shravanam. And Shravanam is the most powerful, right? Because that's how in the previous ages, Shruti, all the Shastras, scriptures were called Shruti, and then Smriti is remembrance, the Puranas. Shruti is how people by hearing could remember and get purified. So we just by hearing Śrīmad Bhāgavatam get purified, and especially on Ekadashi or Dwadashi day, if we hear, then we are assured of what? Now pay attention. Long life. If you want to live long, right? If you want to engage in devotional service and have sufficient time so that you perfect, yourself in this very life and attain the love of Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada, he makes his, the success criteria for the movement very easy. He says, even if we can get one pure devotee, our mission is successful. And he is pointing it for you to be that devotee. So you have to take it to your heart. We have to take it to our heart. That it is every individual one of us he's talking to. And he's saying that please take to this movement, take to Krishna consciousness and perfect your life, attain perfection, get out of the miseries of this world and go back home, back to Godhead. So hearing is very important. And now he is saying that even if, and also the if attention is there, while fasting is purified of all sinful reactions. Now prior to that there was another blessing, sorry I missed that one. So here it is. So one who is with undeviating attention constantly recites this literature at every moment of every hour, as well as one who faithfully hears even one verse or half a verse or a single line or even half a line, certainly purifies his very self. So such is the blessing. Even if half a line somebody hears, gets purified. And one next blessing is who controls his mind. So we talked about austerity of mind, body and speech in the previous classes. So one who performs the austerity of mind, body and speech and fast at the holy places like Pushkar, Mathura or Dwarka and studies this scripture will be freed from all fears. So, one will become fearless. One would attain perfection of fearlessness and can continue to march on his journey back home, back to Godhead. Next blessing. So again, these are amazing blessings. I was so surprised, so many blessings in here. And a person who glorifies this Puran by chanting or hearing it. So you're all hearing it. So again, just glorifying this. The demigods, sages, siddhas, pitas, manus and the kings of the earth bestow all desirable things. So that's why Srila Prabhupada used to say that when we are engaging in Krishna consciousness, we don't have to engage in other rituals, right? The 5 kind of sacrifices, the Panchayagya that have been prescribed in the Vedas, we don't have to engage in those because we are satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna. So that's like watering the root of the tree. So all the branches, all the twigs, all the leaves and all the parts of the tree are automatically satisfied, they are getting the nourishment. So we are serving the Lord. And also Lord Krishna says that those who worship the demigods are actually worshipping me only, but indirectly. And that worship is for less intelligent person. And Srila Prabhupada used to like this phrase a lot, poor fund of knowledge. They have poor fund of knowledge. So we have been given this abundant fund of knowledge in the form of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam that we should take and accept it and then engage accordingly in all our activities. So when we engage, it is also very important that we are not just engaging for the, as a ritual. It is spiritual, transcendental subject matter, so we should be spiritually inclined to understand how we can improve it. Because it has been revealed in the first canto by Sutta Goswami himself. Dharma sunishtita pumsam vishvakshena kathasu yaha notpadyate yadiratim shramayeva hi kevalam. If whatever occupational duty a human being engages in does not bring attraction to the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna, then it is just useless labor. So we don't want to perform useless labor, right? We want to really carry it out with our mind, body and words engaged, with attraction to his lotus feet, with complete absorptions, our voice, our mind and our hearts filled with affection, and we are paying attention as we hear, and then we attain perfection finally. So in this way, we get the blessings of all the residents, all the demigods and the presiding deities of all higher planets and the sages and the pitas, right? Now next blessing is by studying this Bhagavatam. So today we are studying Bhagavatam, 12th canto, 12th chapter. So yes, a Brahman can enjoy the same rivers of honey, ghee and milk he enjoys by studying the hymns of the Rig, Yajur and Sama Vedas. So now here it is mainly directed towards Brahmanas. But once you are purified, you come to the level of, you even transcend that stage, right? Vaishnava. Vaishnava is even greater than Brahmana. So if you are a devotee of the Lord, or if you are becoming devotee of the Lord, or if you are aspiring to become a devotee of the Lord, this blessing also applies to you. Now the next blessing is again referring to a Brahman who diligently reads this essential compilation of all the Puranas will go to the supreme destination, which is the Supreme Lord Himself has herein described. So there have been description of transcendental abode in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam extensively, in detail. So we will be able to go back home, back to Godhead. Now, last but not the least, well, again there are many verses that contain, indication of other blessings, but this is explicitly called out verses that I am reading. The last but not the least is, a Brahman who studies the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam achieves firm intelligence in devotional service. So yes, engaging in devotional service is important, but having an intelligence to apply intelligence when engaging in devotional service is more important, right? And a king, so this is for Brahmana, now comes Kshatriya. A king who studies it gains sovereignty over the earth. So he can become the emperor of the earth, just like Parikshit Maharaj was. So a king, a Kshatriya, can become the ruler of the earth. And a Vaishya, right, a mercantile man, who's engaged in either trade or cow protection or agriculture, farming, acquires great treasure, because that's the purpose. Economic development is what a Vaishya is looking for. And a Shudra is freed from sinful reactions. So again, all varnas, the whole human society is purified and getting their desired results that they are seeking after, even materially. So this is also been glorified in the first canto. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajyate purusham param. Akama sarva kamo va. Akama means one who has no desire. So here akama is referring to no material desire. Soul cannot be without desire, but one only has desire to serve Lord Shri Krishna, but no desire to satisfy one's senses, right? No sense gratification, but just serving Lord Shri Krishna. That is akama. Sarva kama, on the other hand, is one who is fully seeking sense gratification. And then moksha kama. And of all the sense gratification, the topmost one is to gain liberation, to attain transcendental bliss, transcendental enjoyment. And udaradi, moksha kama udaradi. So all these three kind of personalities, they should engage in what? Tivrena bhakti yogena. With great enthusiasm, with great determination, they should, with great energy, they should engage in what? Bhakti yoga. Devotional service, and become Krishna conscious. Yajyate purusham param. And whose devotional service? Of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purusham param, param purusha. And who's that? Lord Shri Krishna. So this has been identified. Now there is a caution also, which brings us to the attention, which is in the last purport that has been covered by the acharyas. That without offering respectful obeisances to Shukdev Goswami and other great acharyas in his line. So Srila Prabhupada is in the same line, right? One cannot possibly gain the privilege of entering into the deep transcendental meaning of Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So it is telling us what is the process, right? Tadvidhi pradipatena pariprashnena sevaya ubdeshyanti tajjnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. So please, this is where we understand that the process is that we have to take to the parampara, right? And we should accept a bona fide spiritual master in disciplic succession and serve him. And there are two ways to serve a spiritual master. One is Vapu and another one is Vani. Vapu means body. So we serve him, his body, by providing him comfort, by attending to him in person. And being the order supplier, whatever he wants, we supply that. Now another one is Vani. Vani is by following his instructions. If he says, read Bhagavad Gita, we sincerely read Bhagavad Gita. If he says, read Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, we sincerely read Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. If he says, perform Sankirtan Yajna, we perform Sankirtan Yajna. Whatever he says, as per the scriptures and sadhu, so all three are in alignment, we carry it out with full attention, with full affection, with that surrendered mood, in a humble mood, and just understanding that this is for our own purification, because he is only repeating what has been repeated by the previous acharyas. So that is important, right? Vani Seva is even higher than Vapu Seva. Following the instructions is even higher than giving the attention to the personal form of the spiritual master, because it gives him transcendental bliss and makes him feel satisfied. So it's very interesting. I was reading as how Srila Prabhupada, within 30 days, he had, laid down the cornerstone at 3 major temples on the land. He had acquired the land, and so at Juhu in Bombay, in Mayapur, as well as in Vrindavan, in Ramanreti area, he had laid the cornerstone. And then, His Grace Shyam Sundar Prabhu, he was so amazed. He was saying, Srila Prabhupada, it's so amazing that within 30 days you did all these amazing feats, and only if we could do half of this, because all the devotees were in complete awe, right? Means they were amazed by the dynamic of Srila Prabhupada. He did not just lay the cornerstone, did not just get the land, but also he registered, he went to Mathura. Then the very next day after doing the ceremony, and got the land registered and everything, and performed all the ceremonies and so forth. So they were in complete awe. It's not very easy to perform anything, to acquire land and to start building on it in India. I mean, of all the places, that's like the toughest place. That's a true test of your skills. Sometimes we joke around that if you want to buy a property in India, it's the toughest. If you want to drive anywhere, in India, it is the toughest. Because on the road you will find all kind of interesting things, right? Sometimes you see a bicycle, guy cutting you. Sometimes you see, the bikes and scooters, they are crossing over. And sometimes you see that the traffic man himself is, having lunch and, saying, whatever you guys want to do, just do it. And then there is a traffic jam. So that is a very common occurrence. So again, this is prevalent because of our experience, but there are maybe many other places that we have not been and may have even worse experiences. We are just trying to identify that this place in this material world, every place is a place of misery. Yet at the same time, Srila Prabhupada, even in those tough situations, even with his old age, even with his driving the whole movement forward, he was leading the whole movement forward, he was still able to perform such amazing feats. Now, Srila Prabhupada's response was, why half? You should do twice, or even 5 times, or even 10 times, or even 20 times. My Guru Maharaj, he only had 64 mutts, right? The temples in India. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada had, established 64 mutts. And then he said, and we already have 90s, more than 90 centers all around the world. So you should go ahead and create more. You should move this movement forward. So this was a great, inspiring, encouraging word. Srila Prabhupada is telling all of us that when we have such wonderful opportunity in this life, or human form of life, which is so rare, that all of us should take this message to our heart and push forward in spreading Krishna consciousness all around the globe. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prophecy was that in every town and village, on every street, there will be Sankirtan, right? Glories of the holy name. And that is still yet to achieve. And it's on all of us and the future generations that we make it achievable. 10,000 years, starting from the birth of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, are the golden years in this Kali age. And these golden years are the shining years. So we are very lucky that in the Kali age, we are born in this golden age where we have an opportunity to get shelter of, disciplic succession, the acharyas, as well as Lord Shri Krishna, and return back home. And this chapter is all about that. That this literature is going to bring a revolution in the impious lives of this material world, which is full of miseries, full of darkness, and the civilization is completely misdirected. So we have to look from that perspective and march on. So in this chapter, some glories of Lord's holy name have been described. So he has many holy names, right? And they are indicating his extraordinary transcendental qualities. So Lord is known as Hrishikesha because he is the master of the senses. We talked about the process. We are all looking for sense gratification, but we do not know the process. We do it the other way around. We try to acquire sense objects and thinking that our senses, when engaged with the sense objects, will give us happiness. And that is the wrong formula. With time and again it has been tried. And the senses, if you know, they always move the target to the next thing. So that's like putting clarified butter in fire, and it's not going to, dry the fire out, rather it's going to go ablaze stronger. The process is again and again given in the Shastra says that when we serve Lord Kṛṣṇa, and Lord Kṛṣṇa is the master of the senses. So when we please Him, He is the master of the senses, so our senses are automatically satisfied. And that is the lesson we get from the first 2 chapters of Bhagavad Gita as well. That Arjuna was trying to satisfy his senses, looking from his material position and relationship with all the other warriors on the other side. He was saying, I don't want to kill them for various reasons, 5 reasons mainly, 5 categories. And he was looking from the bodily conception of life. Yet at the same time, Lord Kṛṣṇa wakes him up and says, wake up, Arjuna. You are the spirit soul and you are eternal. And so are these personalities that you are seeing. And actually, if Dronacharya, who's your guru, and Bhishma Pitama, your grandsire, even if they die, they would attain the supreme abode. Right? So it will be a benefit because they are in their old bodies, they are suffering. So this will actually be a benediction. So Lord Kṛṣṇa reveals him, wakes him up, and then he says, yes, I understand. By the time 18th chapter happens. Actually in 11th chapter itself, he is glorifying Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa that yes, you have revealed to me the truth which has already been revealed by Devashi Narad, Vyasadeva and Devla Rishi. So we understand from that perspective how it all goes on. Now, so the formula has to be applied correctly. We should satisfy the senses of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, give him pleasure. Anukulena Kṛṣṇa Anushilanam Bhakti Uttama. Then our devotional services will become perfect. So the perfection of, by chanting the holy name, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. We can attain perfection in our life, and the perfection of life is chanting of the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So this is what, again and again we hear His Holiness Niranjan Swami telling us how to become perfect and what is the purpose of perfection. What do you do after you become perfect? So the means and the ends are the same. And we talked about that story about this beggar who wanted to see the gold. He went to the king and said, my dear king, I've never seen gold. Can you show me gold? King is like, he's a beggar. Why does he want to see gold? Okay. He says, why do you want to see? He's like, I've never seen it. I would like to see. The king asks the treasurers to come and gives him specific instruction. Take him to the treasure house, open the door, and in the treasure house show him the gold. So the beggar follows the treasurer. They walk up the steps to go to the treasure house. The treasurer opens the door and he says, he picks up a golden ornament and he says, this is gold. Now as soon as the beggar sees the gold, he's shocked. Why? Because now he looks back. The steps that he took to come to the treasure house, they were also made of gold. But he never realized that till he saw the gold, right? So when we chant the holy name, we are engaged in devotional service, and the chanting of the holy name is our prayer to engage in the devotional service. And when we become perfect, we enjoy ourselves. No, that's not the case. We engage in devotional service and continue to chant the holy name. So that is the purpose, that we continue to satisfy, because all other activities are shramevahi kevalam, useless labor. Now in this chapter, Sutta Goswami starts narrating. So Acharyas, Srila Vishwanath Chakravartipad and Jiva Goswami, they elaborately identify that he is not covering all the pastimes, he is not covering all the personalities, he is just covering some of the main incidents in this particular chapter of, the 12 cantos that we have covered to this point. Yet at the same time, one should not think that those personalities or those pastimes are less significant. Actually, every pastime is transcendental within itself. So we are going to quickly cover. So we covered, in this Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, earlier, the history of Maharaj Parikshit and the sage Narad Muni when he was a maidservant's son. They have been described. How, Narad Muni, he goes to Vyasadeva and he enlightens Vyasadeva that even though you have written all the Puranas and the Vedas, you are not satisfied because you have not glorified the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you should engage in writing Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So he imparted that knowledge, that instruction. And that is a picture here, yes, I'm reminded of. So right here, where Devashi Narad gives instruction to Srila Vyasadeva, Kṛṣṇa Dvaipanya Vyasadeva. And Srila Vyasadeva writes Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, which is filled with the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So the narration continues, and so Sutta Goswami is telling that in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam we have discussed the history. And says Devashi Narad, he also tells about his previous life when he was a maidservant's son and how he got during the Chaturmasya, the company of the great Vedantists who were traveling. And just by eating the remnants of their leftovers, right, the remnants of the food, prasadam, he was purified. And even though, his only shelter was his mother and she was bitten by a snake. I don't want to go into too much story because that we already covered, but I just wanted to cover that this is an important one. So sometimes people say, oh, he was a maidservant's son and he could rise to that level. But why did he become a maidservant's son? It was a previous life where he was actually a Gandharva and he was very beautiful and he was surrounded by apsaras and he would sing. And he was cursed because he was, as if engaged in sense gratification to enjoy in that mood. So he was cursed to become a Shudra. So he appeared in his next birth as maidservant's son. So again, sometimes we see that the devotees of the Lord, they are cursed, but then when the great personality is cursed or blessed, since they are in the transcendental platform, they work accordingly. So he attained perfection even in that life as a maidservant's son, and in his next life, he gets a transcendental body as Devashi Narad. And that was on a previous day of Lord Brahma. So we talked about that. And also, Sutta Goswami is saying that in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Devashi Narad's discussion from Lord Brahma has been described as how Lord incarnates. So there are 10 subject matters in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Atra sarga visargascha sthanam poshanam mutayaha Manvantare Shanukatha Nidodho Mukti Ashrayaha. So Atra Sarga Visargasa. So primary creation is done by Mahavishnu. And then secondary creation is where Lord Brahma creates, Lord Vishnu maintains, and Lord Shiva annihilates. So this has been explained also in the first canto extensively in the discussion where Lord Brahma is revealing this to Devashi Narad and how he was blessed when he heard the word tapa and he meditated, and then he was given this potency to be able to create. So all potencies, all abilities, Paurusham Nishu, Lord Kṛṣṇa says, and the ability in man in Bhagavad Gita. So all abilities that we get are coming from Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. But we may have so many abilities, and all these abilities are 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And until we engage them in serving Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, we do not get that one. The moment we become devotees or aspire to become devotees, we get that one before the zeros, and now it has value. Otherwise, you add all these zeros, what is the value of zeros? Srila Prabhupada reveals this in his lectures. And then there is discussion of Vidura with Uddhav first. When Uddhav, after having discussed and received the instructions of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, he is going over to Badrikasham, but before going to Badrikasham, he stops at Vrindavan. And then as he is heading back, he says Vidurji, and then Vidurji wants to actually take initiation from Uddhav, but Uddhav is much younger. So he says, you should not take from me, you should approach sage Maitreya. He would be the right personality. So this is also very important. Sometimes even the age difference shows. And we understand that, Mandavya Muni had actually cursed Yamraj. So in his, he had to take birth as Vidurji. So Maitreya Muni, when Vidurji goes and meets Maitreya Muni at Prayag, so again there, Maitreya Muni immediately accepts him as his disciple and gives him this wonderful discourse that goes on, in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So that has been discussed. Annihilation has been discussed extensively. then all of a sudden we see that Hiranyaksh was annihilated. He was killed by Lord Varahadev, who appeared as boar incarnation of the Lord. And so he was slain, and the earth was delivered from the Garbhodhak ocean. Hare Krishna. And so from that point onward, the progeny has been discussed, where now sometimes people talk about Hiranyaksh. Hiranyaksh. So Hirana means gold and Aksh means eye. So Hiranyaksh had the eye for gold. He was always seeking gold. And he took out so much gold from the planet Earth that the planet Earth lost its stability and fell out of orbit, scientifically speaking, people who are scientifically oriented. And Lord reestablished Earth, and back in its orbit, so that way continues. Then the creation of demigods, animals and demonic species of life, that appears. The birth of Lord Rudra, when Lord Brahma had the Chaturkumaras and they refused, in the mission of increasing the progeny, he became angry, and from the middle of his eyebrows appeared this, baby boy. So, purplish baby boy, reddish blue is identified in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. So that has been described. And then the appearance of Swayambhuva Manu has been identified from the half man, half woman Ishvara. And then the appearance of the first woman, Shatrupa, has been described, who is the consort of Swayambhuva Manu. And then there is, as the narration continues, there is description of Kadama Muni and how he satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Swayambhuva Manu, he gave his daughter Devahuti in marriage to Kadama Muni, and so Kadama Muni and Devahuti, afterwards they had 9 daughters and 1 son. And who's this son? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Kapila, the son of Devahuti. And so there is a great conversation between Lord Kapila and Devahuti has been described. Then there is progeny of the 9 great Brahmanas being described, and then Daksha's sacrifice is spoiled. First, Sati, when she goes, she jumps into the fire. So she invokes the fire, and that first spoils it. Then Lord Shiva takes his Rudra form, throws one of his jata, the matted hair, one strand, onto the ground, comes up with this great demon, and along with the associates of Lord Shiva, they destroy the whole arena, chopping off the head of Daksha, And then Lord Shiva gives him the goat's head, but he was not satisfied, so he gives up his life. And then the history of Dhruv Maharaj, as how he was the son of Uttanpad, who was the son of Manu, who was the son of Lord Brahma. So grandson of Lord Brahma, he is rejected by his stepmother to sit on his father's lap. So he becomes angry and gets the mercy of Devashi Narad. And he takes to devotional service by performing meditation Satyuga time. And he attains perfection, sees the lordship completely purified, he turns back and he becomes the emperor. And then we also heard as how, seeing that his half-brother, his Uttam Shloka, being killed by a yaksha, and his stepmother Shuruchi being burned in the forest fire, he goes and he causes havoc in the north where the yakshas were living. And at that time, Lord Brahma and Manu, they come and pacify him. So he is pacified, and then he attains back, because they tell him that Lord Kuvera, the treasure of the demigods, he is also yaksha, he is the king of the yaksha, he is going to take it as an offense. Then the glories of King Prithu has been identified, who came, again an incarnation of Shaktavish Avatar of Lord Shri Krishna. And then we hear about King Prachin Bharhi and how he got instructions from Devashi Narad. And his sons Prachetas, they performed meditation for 10,000 years after they got instructions from Lord Shiva. So those wonderful pastimes, and the story of Puranjana, Puranjani and Agyat. We discuss all those as well. The life of Maharaj Priyavrata is being identified by how he took to renunciation, but being incited by Lord Brahma and Manu, Swayambhuva Manu, he took back to family life and carried out the administration of the universe. Now the characteristic and activity of King Nabhi have been identified. Lord Rishabh Dev, and his son, he had 100 sons. The first one is King Bharat, And now King Bharat, because of attachment to the deer, gets the form of deer in his next life, and by the mercy of the Lord, he remembers his previous life, so he engages in devotional service just by meditating, hearing and chanting. So he gets a human form of birth in a Brahman family as Jar Bharat, and he attains perfection. Prajapati Daksha is again reborn as the son of Prachetas. So the progeny of Daksha's daughters as demigods, humans, and so forth have been identified. Now, amazingly, as all these demigods and demons, their description is going on, great devotee Vritrasur, his description comes, and Maharaj Parikshit inquires, and this was Chitraketu in his previous birth was being identified and so forth. So again, then Lord's various incarnations, Kurma, Matsya, Narsimha, Vamanavta, the churning of the ocean, the histories of Sukanya, Sharyati, Kukuksha, and so Katwanga, and Sutta Goswami is literally narrating the various personalities that they were already covered, their pastimes were already covered. The various incarnations of Lord Kṛṣṇa were covered. Shaktavishavtar as Parshuram, who appeared as a descendant of Bhrigu he has been, and how he annihilated the Kshatriyas. So all that, Ayala, Yayati, Nahusha, Dushmanta's son Bharat, and Shantanu, and Shantanu's son Bhishma. So now this lunar, so he covered the whole solar dynasty, descendants of sun, and as well as the descendants of moon, coming down to the level of the appearance of Lord Shri Krishna. So Shukdev Goswami, he covers the appearance of Lord Shri Krishna in Mathura, in the prison house of Kansa, and how his childhood was spent in Gokul in the initial ages, and how he killed Putana. Yes. So Lord Krishna's pastimes and Lord Krishna's appearance is Paritranaya sadhuna vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sansthapanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. Lord appears to Paritranaya sadhuna, to give blessings, protection to his devotees, vinashaya cha dushkritam, to annihilate the miscreants and to re-establish the principles of religion, dharma sansthapanataya. So he appears millennium after millennium. So this is a wonderful opportunity, and Srila Prabhupada said that earth is very fortunate. On earth, India is very fortunate. In India, Vrindavan is very fortunate, where Lord Krishna appeared, because he only appears once in the day of Lord Brahma, which is one kalpa, thousands of Chaturyugas. So we are very lucky that recently he appeared. And then killing of various demons like Putana, Shaktasur, Tranavarta, Bakasur, that goes on. Vritrasur and Aghasur, and Brahma Vimohan Leela happens. Then killing of Dhenukasur and his associate is done at the Talwan. And then Lord Balaram kills Pralambasur. So again, Kaliya's chastisement, the forest fires, the gopis, their great austerities, the wives of the Brahmanas blessed by Lord Krishna, and the Govardhan Leela happens. King Indra and Surbhika, performs Abhishek of Lord Shri Krishna, and then Lord's nocturnal pastimes with the gopis and the killing of the demons like Shankachura, Ishta and Keshidevan have been described. Then Akrura arrives. Now Lord Krishna, he goes to from Vrindavan to Mathura. But Lord Krishna Acharya says never step out of Vrindavan. So who's this personality going out of Vrindavan? This is Vasudev Krishna, right? Non-different from Krishna, yet at the same time pastimes are different. It is Vasudev in Krishna who's killing all these demons. Lord Krishna has no business killing his demons. He is having loving exchanges with his devotees. And so we hear during Mathura and Dwarka pastimes as how Lord Krishna, he acquires 16,108 queens, and he kills so many demons, including Narkasur, and then Jai Vijay, who had previously been cursed, their third birth. Yes. So their third birth was as Shishupal and Dantavakra. So they were also killed. 17 times Lord annihilated, the 18 Akshahanis of Jarasandha, and he also was the cause of the Yavana king, Kalyavan, being killed by another king. And so it goes on, and how when he was actually in the childhood, he brings back the son of his spiritual master, Sandipani Muni. So those pastimes are also there. So in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam we see it is full of blessings and full of the name, fame, glories and pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna. And then finally, we heard about Samantika Joel's story. We heard about how Lord is so merciful that he is blessing his devotees and he is annihilating the demons. And finally, he engages Pandavas to glorify the Pandavas, to deliver the burden of this earth. Now there stays the burden of love, which are the Yadus. So his own dynasty, his own Yadavas, his own associates, he is planning to take them back to Godhead. So on the pretext of Brahmana's curse, we heard about that extensively, how he makes an arrangement to go back. But before going back, there are a couple of things that happen. Narad Muni gives instruction to Vasudev, father of Lord Vasudev. And Vasudev is already a pure devotee. So Devashi Narad is giving instruction to another pure devotee. And because he's a pure devotee, he's relishing those instructions. And he's feeling, so again the mood has been identified, that he's feeling that he's not qualified and he may not be able to go back home. But it is revealed very nicely by the Acharyas that actually he is a pure devotee. There is no chance that he will not be able to go back home, back to Godhead. And then as how at Prabhas, all the Yadavas, the men, they fight with each other. And how they kill each other. And leaving only Lord Kṛṣṇa and Lord Balaram. Then Lord Balaram leaves his body and goes back home as Anantashesh. And Lord Kṛṣṇa, he gives instructions to Uddhav previously. And Uddhav goes with that instruction to Badrika Ashram, but before that he meets Vidurji. So wonderful pastimes and wonderful blessings are all around in Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, extensively discussed. Now in the 11th canto is where Uddhav Gita we discussed. And within Uddhav Gita, King Nimi meeting the Nav-Yogendras being described, King Yadu meeting Lord Dattatreya, the Avdut Brahman, who is talking about his 24 gurus. That has been described. And coming to this point, in 12th canto, the symptoms of this Kali age, the characteristic of society of this Kali age has been described. Now this is all for us to understand the nature of this world, to understand the glories of Lord Shri Krishna, to understand what is our position, to reawaken our relationship, that loving, sweet relationship, that mellow, transcendental relationship we have with the Supreme Lord, Lord Shri Krishna and Mother Radha, so that we can engage in making our life perfect, which starts simply by the chanting of the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And as Shukdev Goswami completes his Śrīmad Bhāgavatam narration, Parikshit Maharaj prepares to go back home. Being bit by Takshak, immediately his body turns into ashes, he goes back home. Shukdev Goswami continues on his journey forward, while Janmejaya, he performs this great, yajna to annihilate all the Nagas. So that we also heard, and how he is further enlightened by Brihaspati, the spiritual master of the Devas. And then, Sutta Goswami is continuing the narration at Naimisharanya, because the sages at Naimisharanya want to know what about the Puranas, what are the different kind of Puranas, what are the 4 categories of annihilation, what are the 3 kinds of creation, and they want to know the long lifespan of Markandeya Rishi. So we covered that in 8th, 9th and 10th chapter, and yesterday we covered as how, they are inquiring about the description of the Mahapurusha, right? So even seeing things in this material world, we can remember Lord Shri Krishna. So that was the main theme. And this is where we come to this. And at the end, Sutta Goswami is paying obeisances to the personality who purifies all the hearts, as well as he can, give us the purity and the transcendental love of Godhead. He is glorifying Shukdev Goswami as his spiritual master. So of course he already had his initiating spiritual master who was his father. Yet at the same time, Shukdev Goswami is his instructing spiritual master. So you can have many instructing spiritual master, but only one initiating spiritual master. So he is glorifying Shukdev Goswami from that perspective. And understanding the characteristic of this age, we become aware of our surroundings so that we can prepare ourselves to stay under the radar, right? So we are, first we have to take to this knowledge and then purify our life by reading Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, by getting the blessings, being constantly bathing in this iti dirk swalila abhirananda kunde, in this nectarian, transcendental mellow, and tasting the sweet, ripened fruit of Vedic knowledge, which is Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Amal Puran. So this is where this chapter ends. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Please join us for Narasimha Devati. Gantra Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Hare Kṛṣṇa.
Hare Krishna.